Many questions have come into the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. Many questions, and people are asking the same question. What's eating my tomatoes? Let's find out. Debbie Flowers here, our favorite retired college horticultural professor. And Debbie, when it comes to strangers munching on tomatoes, it's usually the wormy kind.
Yeah.
In a lot of situations.
Yes, it often is. The worms are the larvae of moths. The adult moth comes in and lays the eggs on the leaves of the tomato plant and flies off in the night. It's typically a nighttime thing. And then the eggs hatch, and when they hatch, they're very small eggs. And then when they hatch, they're very small larvae, and they feed on the plant and eventually on the fruit. So it takes a good eagle eye person to find them when they're young. Often what we find first is their poop on the plant, which looks like black ashes almost. And the bigger the ashes, the bigger the fruit. So if I see that in my garden, I look up because the poop falls. Yeah. So I look up in the plant and try to find the worm that's causing that problem. And the easiest way is to control them is to pick them off. Tomato hornworms and tomato fruitworms are the primary offenders in this case.
The moth that lays the eggs that become the tomato hornworm, also known as the tobacco hornworm, they're like kissing cousins. Mm-hmm. This moth is a beautiful moth. It's called the Sphinx moth, and it has like a 6 or 7 inch wingspan. Mm-hmm. Some people refer to it as the hummingbird moth because it has this long proboscis and is very attracted to Nicotiana at night. You may be surprised to see it. Like it almost looks like a hummingbird. But it's a moth, and it only comes out at night.
Right, you have to be out at night.
Yeah, and it lays the eggs that become the worms. And the worms are laid on the underside of the leaves, usually.
Right along where I found them is right along the margin of the leaf. So the very edge of the leaf, but definitely on the underside. And they're sort of an opaque white color, very small, maybe the head of a pin. Mm-hmm. If you here in Central Valley of California, I have found them to be there right around the beginning of July. And so one of the treatments is to use Bacillus thuringiensis, which is a naturally occurring disease that in soil, but it's been made into a concentrate and marketed. You can buy it as a powder and mix it up as a liquid and spray it on the plant. And the eggs will still hatch and the larvae will still come out. But when they eat the leaves, which is where they start, they will eat enough of the Bacillus thuringiensis, also called BT, as in boy and Tom, mm-hmm. very readily available. And then it kills them. I know some people, you were talking about how beautiful a moth it is. I know some horticulturists who don't kill the tomato hornworm because they love the moth. They let it gets bigger and bigger, probably 2 inches long, maybe. And it's green colored and it has a sort of a spike at its tail end. And that's where the horn part of the name comes from. And it'll eventually drop to the ground and form a chrysalis or a pupal case. And it spends its pupal or rest period in the soil. And so if you have a lot of tomatoes or a lot of tomato hornworm damage and haven't caught it in time, you may have a lot of those. They're almost, they're brown and they're almost mahogany color and they're hard.
They look like footballs.
Okay, a little longer compared to their width, but yes, you'll find those in the soil if you're digging in the soil. But I know people who just let them lie and because they like the moth so much.
One of my most exciting evenings as a gardener, I was out planting something, it was like in mid-April. And a few feet away in this raised bed, all of a sudden, the ground started moving. Ooh. And the moth emerged from the soil.
Oh, wow.
And I go, the miracle of nature.
Oh.
And I stomped it with my foot.
Oh, jeez. Well, when they first emerge, they just sit whenever any moth or butterfly does. And they have to pump liquid into their wings before they're able to fly. Oh, what a bummer.
for the moth, yeah. But
yeah, for the moth.
I figure I saved a few tomatoes that way down the line.
Right, you probably did. A couple of other controls. One is birds. Where I live now, I have not had tomato hornworm problems in my garden. I find them occasionally, but they don't grow to full pupil size because there are power lines above my tomato bed, and the birds sit up there and watch and come swooping down. and pick them off. It's great bird food. Another is to till. Tilling is not recommended in general anymore for soil. It disturbs a lot of soil structure. But if you have a very high infestation of tomato hornworms, rather than digging through it and sifting for those pupal cases, just tilling would break up those pupal cases and get rid of them.
If you don't want to live under power lines, and I would understand why you wouldn't, but if you still want to attract birds to your yard, there's a lot to be said for evergreen shrubs, because they serve as great bird hotels for the smaller birds, who are the ones who go after the tomato hornworms.
Yes, and they nest in evergreen shrubs, and so they're most in need of food when they're feeding those babies, and the two often coincide when the tomato hornworms are out and when the birds have babies that they need to feed.
And we should emphasize we're talking evergreen shrubs, not trees, because of the protection that a shrub provides the smaller birds from larger birds, for example.
Yes, very dense.
And it does work. Another predator of tomato hornworms, and I've seen this in action too, yellow jackets.
Yes, I have seen that as well.
And paper wasps.
Yes.
They will actually land on a tomato hornworm, take a big chunk out of it.
They cut it in pieces, yes.
And fly it back to their nest.
Yes. And if you wait, they'll be back. And they do the whole, yes. That was incredible to see. Yes.
But, especially in terms of yellow jackets, you probably want to eliminate most yellow jacket nests. Paper wasps, on the other hand, I don't have a problem if their nests are away from high traffic areas and not, say, under the eaves of the patio door, where they tend to form their upside down egg carton egg cases, or inside pipes of clotheslines or things like that.
Yes.
But because paper wasps will protect the nest, but that's about it.
Right. They're peaceful unless you disturb them in the nest. Right. I while teaching, there was a nest I didn't know about under the table where the students were working, and they called me over, and I bent over and I got stung 6 times in a row.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But in fact, I have a video we'll post on the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. We'll put a link to a YouTube video of a wasp chowing down on a tomato hornworm.
Yeah, it's something to see.
Yeah, so, not everybody's bad. They all have good points. So consider the wasp in that regard.
Yes.
Helping you out in your battle against tomato hornworms. What about the tomato fruit worm? They tend to make, instead of big chewing marks in tomatoes, they tend to make little holes.
And they go inside and feed on the tomato from the inside out.
So there's a good chance then that when you pick that tomato and take it inside and slice it up for a sandwich, you might get some protein.
Yes, you could. You could, yes.
So that might be more of a surprise. What is the control for a tomato fruit worm?
Tomato fruit worm, which, as you were saying, the cousin thing is a cousin of the corn earworm, and it tends to be a bigger problem in a corn patch than in a tomato patch, but it does feed on tomatoes. It is a small moth, only about 1 inch, and it's tan colored. It's one of those, small moths that flies by and you don't really think much about them. Has banded wings, but its larva is varies in color, tan, yellow, brown to black, but it has a black head. And so if you see that on your tomato, you'd have to be out there actually watching to see when it's going into the tomato to catch it at that point. The control is difficult. The worms aren't very big. They're a 1/2 inch total. And so again, we'd go back to the hopefully natural predators, wasps, birds, those kinds of things, but also the BT, the use of BT. And you'd have to check with your local master gardeners or cooperative extension, somebody like that, to find out when's the best time to apply it. But BT only works if you apply it when the larvae are very small, first out of the egg, because they have to eat a certain quantity of it in order to kill themselves.
And that means it wouldn't be any good to spray BT where the worm is already inside the tomato.
No, it won't do anything.
Yeah.
So then you'd handpick and destroy that tomato.
Right.
So that it doesn't pupate, make another adult, which then lays more eggs.
I think the bottom line is before you serve a tomato from your garden to a guest or to your neighbor, unless you don't like the neighbor, look for little pinholes and maybe cast those aside, or again, for that neighbor you don't like.
Right.
All right. Other chewing critters that we see here in California, and they can be elsewhere. I know in the Southwest they're fairly predominant, are the green fruit beetles. And this is a beetle that's often confused with the Japanese beetle. The Japanese beetle is much smaller. The green fruit beetle is about 1.5 pennies in diameter, if you would, whereas the Japanese beetle is about 3/4 the size of a penny. So it's much bigger, but it does have that iridescent green wings, and you can really tell the green fruit beetle when you disturb it on a tomato because it will fly away, but it makes the sound of a World War I biplane, and it's really loud. And that's what shocks most people is the noise of the green fruit beetle, but they will be eating your tomatoes. It's not uncommon, especially if you go out there in the morning, to see a bunch of green fruit beetles going after your tomatoes. To control them, if you get there early in the morning, they're kind of slow, and you could dump them into a bucket of soapy water. There is another way, though, to trap them because they're very attracted to grape or peach juice, like a 50-50 mix of grape or peach juice and water. And you can capture them with a homemade trap. You put, about a 1 gallon container and place several inches of that peach or grape juice plus water mix into that 1 gallon container. And in the opening, put a funnel of wire mesh with its widest opening facing up. The beetles are attracted by the bait. They'll land in the funnel and they'll be guided to walk down into the container. But once inside, they can't escape. So then
Tricky.
So then you have this gallon container with green fruit beetles floating in it, and you can just...
I wonder if chickens would eat them.
Chickens and ducks. Mm-hmm. If they were on the ground...
If they were on the ground, will they eat them dead? Like, could you take your bottle of your trap?
I'll let you try that.
I don't have chickens, but...
No, you don't have green fruit beetles either, apparently.
No, I have never seen them.
Oh, they are...
Isn't that amazing?
They're cute. They're really cute. We know a mutual friend of ours is a retired state entomologist who grew up in Mexico, and he says that for entertainment as a child, they would capture the green fruit beetle and tie a string around one of their legs and use it as a balloon.
Because it flew.
Yeah, because
but you probably hear them coming because of that loud noise they make. Now, you did mention the Japanese beetle. And Japanese beetles, if you live in Japanese beetle country, you know to fear them in your landscape. And they have the potential to eat tomatoes, but it isn't high on their favorite food list. They'll eat peppers and eggplant before they eat tomatoes, and those are all in the same family. But even before they go to the peppers and eggplant, they will go to the cucurbits, so cucumbers and squash. So it's not likely that they're going to be on your tomatoes.
All right. Debbie Flower, thanks for a few minutes of your time, and thanks for giving us some tips on controlling worms, especially that tomato hornworm.
Yeah, I love those tomatoes. They're worth preserving.